We've all been searching for something that's bigger than us to believe in.
The Star! What a perfect fit for Sony Pictures Animation to tell the story of the birth of Jesus, because no other animation studio is capable of making their audiences shout out, "Jesus Christ!" I mean, really? We're letting this deadbeat company adapt the nativity story? Knowing Sony, I would expect something that's poorly animated and stupidly over the top, where Mary's running around going, "Oh my goodness, Joseph! The baby is coming!" And then after that, it would cut to an unfunny Andy Samberg saying, "Check it out! I'm a camel, homie!" But in all seriousness though, there is a slight chance that this could turn out to be good, since they are also collaborating with the Jim Henson Company for this picture. The last time that Sony worked with another studio on an animated Christmas movie was Arthur Christmas, and that was honestly a really good film. With that said, maybe there is hope for this movie to— No, why? Why do you have to put twerking in a nativity movie? Just why? Okay, so what's the damage on this Sony animation film? Let's find out. The story. Ah yes, how can you go wrong with the oldest and most beloved Christmas story of all time, where Mary and Joseph have to travel far to Bethlehem in order to prepare for the birth of the newborn king. With this film, Sony decided to ask the big question, who cares about that old story when you got silly animals? Hey, look at that, aren't these camels funny? And this is the kind of film we're dealing with, people. If you're expecting this to be about the coming of Christ, well, that would cover about 20% of this movie. The rest is nothing but your typical generic talking animals kids flick in the veins of The Wildlife and The Nut Job. Instead of Jesus, the actual story here is about the animals following Joseph and Mary to save them from an evil hunter ordered by King Herod that wants to get rid of the new king. So yeah, it's not about following the star, it's about stopping the villain. Because of this, it ends up making the writing look lazy and confusing, and the latter is mostly asking, why are these things happening in a movie like this?
Woody!
I know! I'll sing you free!
What's even worse for the story is that it tries to implement a whole bunch of side plots for the purpose of cramming in as much characters as they can. But the issue is that they're all thinly connected to each other and offers very little to the movie. Like, do we have to watch the camels do slapstick? Or do we have to constantly update on how close the hunter is? I mean, it's already bad enough that we have a dull and very predictable plot with Bo wanting to help Mary and Joseph, but now it's just clear that the direction is incapable of juggling all the little plots, handling characters, and telling jokes, which the latter is your typical lowbrow kids humor that mostly appeals to children 7 and under. Now, as poorly executed as the story can be, I will say, however, that the best thing to say about it is that it's at least harmless. You can tell that its heart is in the right place and wants to make its target demographic happy. Granted, it is true that there's no subtlety with the religious aspect, and they can feel like they're just randomly thrown in to remind people that yes, this is a nativity movie, but it knows that it's for them. Sure, it's harmless, but it's still a generic talking animals movie, and that doesn't make a good story that should be about the Son of God. The animation. One thing worth noting about this movie is that this is one of those animated features released by a major studio that has a shockingly low budget, which in this case is approximately $20 million. And yet, it somehow still looks better than most Sony animation films. Similar to movies like Captain Underpants and Sausage Party, the reason for its low budget is because the animation was outsourced at Cinesite Studios, and the result turned out to be good. I can't say it's great, but it looks fine. With the materials that the artists and animators have, they did pull off the most that they could, crafting the grand scale of Jerusalem as this desert-like area that would seem like a long way ahead for Mary and Joseph. But when it comes to the character designs, this is where things can be a bit mixed. With the human characters, the designs are nice, but the animals look awkward, like they don't have the right balance of cartoony and maintaining their realistic features. But it does have an overall generic look on everyone.
You're in danger. You need to listen to what I'm about to say extremely carefully.
Do you want a belly rub?
Sure, the designs may not be so great, but the other elements on the characters are somehow impressive. The character animation is solid for what they're trying to do, and the textures give the movie a small quality boost from Joseph's hair to the fur on the animals to the look of the desert-like environments. However, as much as this movie can do with $20 million, a small budget does have its setbacks, mainly on the rendering. You might have heard criticisms that this looks like some straight-to-DVD movie, and that's exactly why. It doesn't have enough power to make the lighting look good, or have the movements look smooth. Not to mention that this movie doesn't take any risks, especially in the animation. In other words, there isn't much that can make this movie visually stand out. It's a little forgettably plain, but the animation can do a decent job. The characters. After watching the movie, I learned a valuable lesson about why every other nativity story doesn't put the focus onto the animals. It's easily noticeable how this was made with a "it's just for kids" attitude, because most of these characters are either failed attempts of a comic relief or one-dimensional archetypes. There's Bo, who wants to be a part of a royal caravan, but has a heart for Mary and Joseph. His buddy Dave is the cynical comic relief. Ruth is the naive friend they meet along their journey. Rufus and Thaddeus are the villain's dogs who are hunting for Mary. By the way, why do we need a villain in the nativity story? And the other animals, like the camels, are pointless additional comic reliefs to fill the movie with random and unnecessary jokes.
Hang on! Cyrus! Down
I
off!
expected a left turn 2 deserts ago.
These wise guys are lost. That's it. I'm fighting through the rains.
And then you have the real stars of the nativity story, Mary and Joseph. Mary doesn't offer much to the film, as she's just the kind-hearted lady who is carrying the MacGuffin of the film. But then you have Joseph. Why the fridge is this movie not about him? He's actually the best thing to come out of this movie. In this interpretation, we see him go through the emotional struggle of not only going to Bethlehem before the baby comes out, but also the troubling thought of becoming the father of the Messiah. It really is a lot to sink in for him, and Zachary Levi gives out an amazing performance. In fact, the voice acting is actually well done on everyone's part. The only problem, though, is that the material that they're given are so awful that not even great voice acting is enough to save this movie. It really does suck because you can hear that they're giving it their all and that they care about working on a movie based on a very important story. But the script and the direction does not have that level of enthusiasm, resulting in wasted talent. There honestly isn't a lot to say about these characters. They can give out a great performance, but conceptually, they're bland, pointless, and easily forgettable. If this movie proved us anything, it's that not even Jesus Christ himself can make a good Sony animation movie. The star turned the nativity story into just another forgettably bland animated kids flick with talking animals. While it does avoid emoji movie levels of bad with decent animation and some great voice acting, it still fails as a movie with terrible writing and childish humor that plagues the entire film. But it is still rather harmless and made for a very specific audience. With that said, the only people I'd recommend to go see this movie are Christians that love mindless cartoons as much as they love Jesus. In fact, this is a movie made for VeggieTales fans. However, I still have to do my job as a critic and judge it by how it is on its own. And the way how this and their other films from 2017 proves that Sony Animation values quantity over quality to just make a quick buck, it's just another cheap cash grab. And that's why I have to give it the AniMat's seal of garbage.
We've all been searching for something that's bigger than us to believe in. Who knew what's
There's something seriously wrong with those animals.